Yeah, we'll be nice and tight, I think. That works. Excellent. All right. So, welcome. Lovely to have you guys here. I thought maybe probably the easiest way for us to do this is just to have you go wild. Tell us, who are you? Why on earth are you on a stage for software for operators?
Should I start?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. Hi, everyone. Zach Sapala, CEO of Particle. So Particle is an IoT device and connectivity platform. So we help companies connect physical products of a variety of kinds to the internet. And we've been in business for about 7 years. So we support industrial equipment, consumer products, micromobility, and we sort of found ourselves getting pulled into this market back in 2017 when micromobility was really taking off as a category, because Particle is often used for sort of prototyping and getting started. So we found ourselves being used in prototypes. And a lot of the early micromobility products were powered by Particle because Particle was the fastest and easiest way to get a product to market. Now, these days, we continue to support, I think we have something like 8 or 10 customers who create a variety of different micromobility products. And a lot of the value that we bring is that we handle the sort of variety of connectivity challenges that you experience when you deploy a product. And this is true regardless of whether it's mobility or other kinds of products and applications. But we can deliver over-the-air software updates at massive scale. We support a bunch of different geographies and different radios and different technologies. So we can handle a lot of the underlying infrastructure to ensure that essentially the product, the vehicle can reliably connect regardless of the situation that it's in, which for those of you who are in the market and have large fleets out in deployment, you know that like the biggest challenge is just making sure that they're all actually connected and communicating the way that you expect them to.
Excellent. Thank you. Gail.
Hi everyone. So my name is Gail. I'm in charge of international development at Vulog. So Vulog has been a pioneer in shared mobility since 2006. So basically we provide a really end-to-end comprehensive shared mobility solution. So we are supporting our customer when launching and operating shared mobility services. So far, we are working with major OEMs and car manufacturers, mobility operators all over the world. As we're in Berlin today, for example, Vulog is powering WeShare with Volkswagen. So initially, we were more a car-sharing share mobility provider, but more and more, we are extending to micromobility. So now we are supporting several customers that are launching kick scooters and mopeds all over the world, so from Stockholm to Miami. Yeah, so this is it.
Excellent. Thank you. Johan.
Johan, I'm the CTO in Urban Sharing. So we're a hardware-agnostic operations platform for micromobility. And prior to starting that company, we were in operations ourselves. So we deployed a couple of bike-sharing schemes and experienced firsthand what kind of pain that really is, especially in terms of like understanding operations, how do you inform the investments you do in CapEx. So we basically built a lot of tools for ourselves to get better than that. And then we turned that into a company, and now we're offering that SaaS in the market. We like to think of ourselves as micromobility native, so we try to focus on a lot of the things that is very specific to small vehicles. And we are about 2 years old, and we just passed about the first 10 million trips on the platform, so we're getting semi-mature. And we're based out of Oslo, a place we're proud to call home, which is one of the first cities that banned cars from the city center. So we got the perfect playground to play around with this. Very excited to be on this panel because I think it says a lot about the ecosystem that we're part of. Because I mean, on our platform we connect particles and we push it out to customers through Twilio. So I think that says a lot about how this industry is working and hopefully will be working going forward.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah.
I don't take it personally, but they gave everyone else a microphone. My name is Evan Kumek. I run the IoT business unit at Twilio. Twilio, you may know, we are a cloud communications platform used by millions of developers, about 6 million developers around the world, to do things like send SMS messages globally, make voice calls, video calling, chat, various other communications modalities. And about 3 years ago, we got into the IoT connectivity space. And what that means for us right now is we're very focused on making that last mile of IoT connectivity globally available and reliable. Specifically around cellular connectivity is a strong focus for us today. We've invested a lot of money in trying not to take a Me Too approach to bringing global connectivity for IoT and into the cellular ecosystem. We've built a lot of technology from the ground up, running our own mobile network essentially, because we know that the requirements of someone who has 100,000 or 1 million devices connected all over the world is very, very different to someone who has a cell phone in their pocket. You need very deep introspection and granularity and visibility and APIs and automation. And so we've spent a lot of time and energy investing in those products for folks doing micromobility and doing other types of large fleet-driven use cases.
Yeah. Awesome. I'm really excited because this in some ways goes right when we think about operators, right? You guys, we've got right from kind of the bottom of the stack all the way up through to actual people who are working on operations, and I think that that's incredibly exciting. Like just the amount of, as you say, software that has now emerged, and that we are getting more mature. That there's tools emerging. What are the challenges for each of you in that stack that people might not know about, that would be there, that you're working through and making it better so that, when someone walks out into the street, they can actually use these devices? I'll just, popcorn style, but I'd love to hear from all of you on this.
So we did a survey a few months back where we asked 800 people who had launched IoT products of a variety of kinds, what were the things that you found to be easier and more challenging? Like, where are the actual difficult technical problems? And what we found is that the challenges that people face are often the ones that aren't discussed as much. So the things that were easier were things like data visualization, data storage, so sort of like traditional problems of where IoT, physical devices, mobility, dealing with data is the same, or not that different from dealing with like web data. So we have a lot of existing products that have been in market for a long time to support those problems. The challenges that came up most frequent, more than half of folks said that the most difficult challenge was debugging unhealthy devices. Also really common was delivering over-the-air software updates. These are the most technically complex challenges. And if you think about debugging unhealthy devices, what that means, if you have a fleet of 10,000 vehicles, and at any given moment, let's say 1,000 of them are not connected. Why are they not connected? Well, they might not be connected because they're not close enough to a cellular tower. They might be not be connected because the RF design of the antenna wasn't quite good enough, or because it's behind metal, or it's in an alleyway, or any kind of physical air issues. But it could also be because the battery performs, when the battery level gets low, there's something different about the logic and how it behaves when the voltages drop. And those are the kind of details that can be really difficult to sort of parse and work through. All you end up knowing is that some of my devices aren't online. And so a lot of the value we've been able to bring through Particle is to say, because we do hardware-software connectivity as an integrated platform, we can solve these problems. And because we can actually figure out where in the technology stack the problem is coming from, and we can help resolve that issue. But I think it's something that people don't realize until they ship a product. The problems that you experience once you have a fleet of devices out in the world are different from what you're expecting before you've done so.
Yeah, and it's expensive if you lose a $700 scooter.
Yes.
Pretty frequently.
Yes.
That's not a good thing.
Yes, exactly.
All right, okay, fair enough. Gail?
I think when discussing with our customers, the main challenge that they are facing is to maximize the use of the fleet, is to optimize their operations, and is to provide their customers with the greatest customer experience and customer satisfaction. And all this is to meet profitability. And so at Vulog, we are investing a lot in machine learning concepts. As you can imagine, we are dealing through a tremendous amount of data, and we want to exploit this data to make sense and to provide added value to our customers. So far, we are developing accurate models of predictive demand, of fleet optimization management, and of dynamic pricing. The things for us like 3 pillars that can really trigger the change in share mobility for our customers.
Great.
Yeah, the predictive rebalancing and maintenance obviously is key for anything fleet. But to your question of what is the challenge, is actually more outside of our companies. Like the technology stuff we'll figure out, but the regulation part is the hard part. And it's not just regulation, it's also that we still are in a situation where every city insists on being different. So, I mean, they want different colors, they want different sizes, they want different models, and, you know, we're not really getting to deploy these things at scale when everybody gets to decide they want things slightly different. And I think, I mean, things like MDS is going to help us, but we need a lot more of that so we can kind of unify how the standard is going to look globally if we're going to also succeed with this on a local scale.
Yeah, awesome, excellent.
Hey, Oliver.
Hey, he's a Kiwi. I'm very excited to have him on stage.
So I think all of these things are relevant, and we, you know, Zach and I operate in very similar spheres, so my answer might be quite similar to Zach, but I think there's a bigger theme here, which is what we see, which is the software industry for the last, I don't know, at least 20 years, but longer, really, has been very focused on the idea that you get these incredible economics by fundraising and building a product and selling it globally. This is sort of an inherent notion of why venture capital is so free and easy in the software industry, because you have these huge markets that you can go after. And we see folks trying to do the same thing, trying to build companies under the same model of operation and same set of assumptions as building a software company, where you can put something in the cloud, or you can build a mobile app and put it in the you know, Google App Store or whatever it is, and you can achieve a really large global audience immediately. But they are instead dealing with a very heterogeneous group of local environments rather than one large global environment. And so we're just doing our best to sort of try and minimize that to the greatest extent possible. So I'm sure there's folks on stage that are working on, like, how do you build products that allow you to work with, like, local city regulatory environments, for example, in the micromobility space. We see a sort of similar level of heterogeneity when it comes to the networks around the world, and there's different network regulations and different network standards, and you know, you may have a group of devices that go offline, and the reason may be, well, yeah, because there was an undersea cable between Israel and Croatia that got cut or something like that. Like, you have these weird regional problems, and those actually erode your ability to build a big, high velocity, high margin software economics type business. And so our thought is, well, at least on the part of the stack that we own, the connectivity, we just try and make that as incredibly homogeneous as possible, basically.
Yeah. The one piece of feedback that I've got from friends, I used to be at Uber, and a lot of my friends have gone on to be at Lime, and they've talked about just how operationally intense it is. Like, it's way more operationally intense to be able to run these businesses than I think a lot of people think. You know, it's a definitely tech company with a lot more stuff going on, you know, absolutely. I'd really love to ask Evan, Zach, for you guys, you know, there's a big shift towards 5G, and everybody's sort of talking about it's going to be a big deal. What are the things that people, one, should know about in terms of what it might be enabling here, but also in micromobility, but also what are the problems? What are the things that people aren't going to see?
So I think in the cellular world, there's always some new technology coming around the horizon that is fundamentally better than the technologies that we have today. And I think one of the challenges, if you're in this space today, the question you have to ask yourself is, on what timeline am I delivering my product, and to what extent can I adopt and use those technologies? 5G is still a few years out from being, from being usable for smartphones, and it will probably be a few years after that before it's really well usable for non-smartphone applications, because smartphones are the primary, application for the cellular towers. And so the things that we will want as vehicle operators, as folks who are doing things other than smartphones, might come a little bit later, which means that even right now, there are major changes happening with LTE and sort of delivering new forms of LTE that are specifically designed for IoT products, things like Cat1, Cat-M1, narrowband, that are even, in some cases, not themselves fully deployed, right? So narrowband is being deployed at different stages in different countries. And so I think that what we recommend and suggest people think about is, you're going to be on 5G one day, but it's probably going to be a little while. How do you put yourself in a position where you can launch a product today using today's technologies and be able to sort of adopt new things as they become viable, and be careful not to be on the bleeding edge, because what you're looking for, what we're seeing is that reliability is more important than whatever the feature is that comes with the next greatest technology, right? It's more important to sort of first make sure you're working on battle-tested technologies and then adopt things as they become viable and for mission-critical applications like mobility.
Yeah, I would agree with most of that. There's a, I agree with all of it, Zach. I'm just kidding. I think in this world that we operate in cellular, but in many aspects of technology, really, you're always going to be trading off simplicity and cheapness. Do you want something that is going to be simple and work and be reliable and not require you to have a huge team that's looking after it? Or do you want something that's going to be like rock bottom unit prices and it might require a ton of additional resources from your side to manage it? And I think we can probably see that pattern in many aspects of our collective businesses, and certainly in cellular that is true. So like to Zach's point, there's really only one technology that works very well internationally right now, which is LTE Category 1. It is quite expensive. Then you have like LTE Category M, for example, which you get a little bit more regional trade-off, and maybe you can use one module for all of North America, for example, and maybe another one for Australia, but it doesn't quite work in Europe, and et cetera, et cetera. And then at the very end of the scale, you have these purpose-built technologies, which are in that 5G moniker, like narrowband, which is basically, forget about it, like super complex right now. You're going to have a different SKU for every operator, let alone every country. You're going to have like you're going to add a lot of complexity to your business for the sake of trading off like a few bucks here and there.
Cool. Johan, you want to jump in?
Yeah, disregarding on the Cat-M1 or whatever network, I think there's also a maturity that needs to happen at the telco level, because right now they're providing a service and they are not set up to get feedback, basically. I mean, they have like SLAs and that kind of stuff, but I mean, we have thousands of devices on the street listening to the network. And I mean, even at the firmware level, I mean, we log the signal and then we send it back to the telco and say like, hey, you have a shadow here. And they go, sure. And that I really wish they saw, micromobility as someone actually, as part of a dialogue where we can actually help them improve that. And, it doesn't matter if they're Cat-M1 or not, if they're not even able to listen to that kind of feedback.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're not here, so I'm sorry about bashing them, but...
Yeah. I wish they were. Yes. Hey, look, well, I've got a question for Gail and Johan. You guys are a little bit closer to the vehicles in that regard, and you're working with operators. What do you think of the things that in some ways, micromobility came about as the peace dividends of the smartphone wars. There were all these new technologies that have come out of smartphones that all of a sudden started getting put in. And, we just saw with Tony and his scooter, it's like, wow, they're getting really advanced. What's the other stuff that we haven't yet seen that you guys can see coming along that you're thinking about to want to go and build with?
I think some platform so kick scooters, mopeds, maybe vehicle are already connected, but will be more and more connected. So with typically with screens when talking about kick scooters and mopeds, and I think the idea will be really to try to customize the customer journey through these screens. So we can imagine with maybe advertising, but also with your previous history of trips, and I mean many other things to think about how to make you special as a customer. And I think this is definitely something we can foresee in the future.
So two things. First of all, I love the analogy to mobile because it reminds me so much of when we tried to cram desktop stuff into mobile and it didn't work. And we're seeing the same thing in micromobility. You don't book a scooter, you instantly get it. And then there's so many paradigm shifts. So I think I like the term micromobility native. We need to understand what that looks like. And I think we're in the midst of finding out that. The other part is, and I'm a bit biased here since I run a platform myself, but I think the stuff we're able to build on top, both on top of the scooters and the bikes, but also the interconnectivity between the vehicles. We want these to start talking to each other, and when they do, we can open up for new services on top, and that's what I'm most excited about.
Yeah, we actually had, I don't know, Horace probably won't mind me mentioning this, but Horace managed to fall off a scooter a couple of days ago because he was trying in one hand to hold a flag and the other hand to hold his phone because he was trying to get navigation around Berlin, and it just struck me, it was like, you've got these devices. Surely you'd be able to work out a way to be able to transfer navigation onto these things and make that whole experience a lot smoother. Well, look, I would love to see from you guys. You know, you're individually, you're talking about platforms. You're each got platforms that people. You're working with entrepreneurs who are going out and actually building stuff. What are the things that you can see that you think are really exciting? That entrepreneurs, if they're coming to you guys and saying, "Hey, we want to build the next big thing," where do you guys start getting excited in terms of what you can see coming down the pipe? And we'll start with Ev this time, and we'll come back this way.
Can I go last?
Yeah, sure. Okay. Yeah.
All right, I'll grab it then. I think as where I started in terms of the whole network idea, to think of this as an ecosystem, to get started, think, what is the one piece I'm adding to it? And then, you can work with all of us and we will help you to get it out there. And I think to have that mindset, because it's not just with the technology you need to build something like this, but it's also how you belong in the city. Because, I mean, not on the stage here is like things like public transport and these other companies that you also think about integration into. And I think, we will have the big ones, the Limes and the Birds, but the long tail of this are going to be the ones who actually think of this more as a value network. And I think that mindset is really important.
Cool. Excellent.
I think some exciting things coming is multimodality. So we have seen that for micromobility, profitability is a challenge. And at Vulog, we believe that multi-services and multimodality could be the answer. We noticed that actually the use of car, of moped, of kick scooters are actually quite complementary. You don't use it for the same kind of trips. You don't use it at the same time of the day or of the week. So it means that from an operator perspective, it makes sense operationally. You are more efficient, and it also makes sense in terms of use of your platform. So I think we will be shifting more and more. I mean, this is at least what we believe at Vulog, from like a single provider of only kick scooters and moving to extending the fleet to maybe moped, bikes, and cars. And we are already supporting several customers with this. So this is actually I think, a quite exciting thing to see. And another one is regarding light electric vehicle. So we are supporting Get Around in Rotterdam. They are launching a super cool concept with a light electric vehicle with a concept car called Bureau. It's like a 2-seat car, really small, that you can actually use both on the bicycle lane and on the road. So really makes sense in the city. And so far, there is not so many cars like this, and in terms of share mobility, there is not so many providers. So I think this is quite a cool thing to think about and maybe to develop more in the future.
Cool.
One of the things that I get excited about is seeing the variety of ways that people are sort of solving problems around mobility and transportation, and even more broadly logistics, of sort of how you get people and objects from one place to another. Where I think that mobility, the way that we look at it, thinking about sort of vehicles, in particular smaller electric vehicles, and how they can support the movement of people, the challenges they're facing, we see a broader set of applications around logistics generally, and I see so many parallelisms between what people are doing here and there. So for instance, we have a customer called Haas that is connecting ambulances and fire trucks. And the reason they're connecting ambulances and fire trucks is to give better information to the dispatchers, who are trying to figure out like how they route all of these various folks to be able to make sure they can effectively arrive where they need to arrive. Also to share that information with drivers. So if you are using Waze and an ambulance drives past, then something will pop up and let you know, hey, by the way, there's going to be a first responder coming by, and so just be careful. And then third, to avoid accidents between ambulances and fire trucks. So apparently this is an issue where you have a site where there's an accident and you have a bunch of ambulances going and they're all going through red lights. They get in accidents with each other. Which is, you can imagine that's particularly, then you have to have more ambulances showing up. But so these are, we hear about these kinds of problems, and then we see there's so much overlap between what they're trying to do, which is essentially get better information about what's happening on the road, and the things that are happening in micromobility, where, okay, step one is to get vehicles out in the world. And then step two is once you have vehicles out in the world, what can you do with that? What does that information allow you to do? And I think all the conversations around, various ways, intermodality and sort of the more complex layer of like, what does it actually take to get a person from point A to point B that happens after you have a fleet of vehicles out in the field, I think is a fascinating set of opportunities and challenges.
Cool.
I agree with everything Zach said. But no, the reason I want to go last is like my answer is maybe a little bit abstract. So we work like Particle in not just in micromobility, but all of IoT. And I think the biggest thing that I get excited about when we hear from customers is people who are solving what I would describe as like true smart city problems. The smart city is like an incredibly buzzword-worthy kind of term, but we're actually starting to see people solve problems actually. And build companies that actually solve these sort of efficiency problems in urban areas that were previously unsolvable by lack of information. So companies, for example, that will use ML to like determine the best routes for someone to go and pick up trash based on sensor data versus just driving around the same route every day. And I think those types of use cases where you take something that was like previously just guesswork and you make it very exacting based on gaining like real world actual knowledge is super exciting. I see some folks starting to do this with micromobility, treating micromobility vehicles as sensor networks and things and using that to inform other processes in the city. I think that's pretty cool. I think it would be interesting to see like, well, if we know that there's this many people moving from this area to that area, what does that mean in terms of other things that might be happening in the city that we could help with, or should we be moving things as well as people, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, really, I just like the stuff that like is not just about like demand response. I need this thing, I'm gonna go there, but more like broad predictive, I now know a lot of things and I can make interesting decisions out of that, or yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I really like the example of the Biro cars in Rotterdam. For me, it's like, I don't know if anybody's seen these. These are the sort of really small two-seater cars, and no disrespect, but they're not the sort of thing I'd want to be seen in normally. So I wouldn't buy one. But if it's raining and I need to get from one end of Rotterdam to the other, I would probably use one. And I think that that's one of these really interesting use cases about all of a sudden you're able to unlock in some ways, these vehicles that would probably not sell particularly well, because you think about why someone buys a vehicle. Oftentimes, it wouldn't suit them for 90% of their trips, but it would suit them for 10%. And if you can start unlocking it because they're shared, then all of a sudden you can really start seeing them deployed on the street, and we might see a lot more use of them, which is, I think, very exciting. Hey, look, well, we've got about 3 minutes, so I'd love to just invite you guys. Is there anything in particular that you would love for the audience to be thinking about in terms of, hey, micromobility, for each of your businesses, what should they be thinking about? If they want to come talk to you guys, where would they get the most value out of talking to you? Yeah, and we'll start with Gail. We'll go Johan. We'll go Zach, and then we'll go Ev, and then we'll go Zach. There we go.
Okay, well, I'm happy to discuss with you guys about like whatever. So, but I think what's happening right now is like it's really exciting. There are so many things moving, and at Vulog we are really happy to be part of this. It seems that the time of owning a car is about to be over, and I think it's a great news. So, so let's see what happens. But yeah, many exciting things moving forward. So it's great.
Excellent. Thanks.
Your question, what we could offer, like what would they come and talk to, right?
And also, and
sure.
for entrepreneurs who want to come talk to you, what should
so
the
I mean,
they should be thinking
first
about?
of all, like come and talk to us about like what it means to actually have an open platform that can integrate stuff, because I think that's what this is all about. The second is, I mean, we are a SaaS product company, but we also need to take part in a lot of the experimentation that goes on, and I think that's the other part I would love to discuss with a lot of you guys is, how are we going to look at things like operational swap of batteries together? Like, how do we think about predictive maintenance? How do we bring down rebalancing and bring that over to user incentives? These are experiments we need to run together, all of us. And I think, to have that kind of mindset, those are the kind of entrepreneurs we're really looking for.
Super.
All right, well, Twilio has a booth here, and we're all super excited to talk to all of you. I would love to talk to folks who are particularly experiencing like a lot of global challenges. Maybe you're deploying into more far-flung parts of the world and just don't always get the same experience from a connectivity or continuity perspective that you have come to know in some of your more primary markets. Love to talk to you about that. As a company, though, we are solving other problems as well for just distributed customer experience. Like, how do you handle the fact that you have 10,000 customers in number of cities that are all on mobile devices? How do you interact with them for customer support, for customer experience? We have a bunch of experience there we'd love to share with you.
I think one of the questions I see a lot of folks asking with that we'd love to engage with is a question of, to what extent do you customize, right? So I think the first wave of micromobility, which was essentially buying off-the-shelf products and like adding connectivity and getting it out to market as fast as possible in the land grab, is over. And now we're in the second phase of people saying, how am I going to do something different? How am I going to do something that's unique, that solves a problem for a unique set of individuals or a unique set of cities, and pursuing those unique needs, which creates all of the challenges of like managing all of that uniqueness, right? So one of the things that Particle is particularly good at is supporting customers who want something that is custom but still is battle tested, that's been used in, you don't want to be starting from zero, because A, you don't want to spend all the money to build from scratch. You also don't want to take the time that it takes to build from scratch, and you want something that's been battle tested and is reliable, which starting from scratch means that you're doing something for the very first time. So we're very good at taking a platform that's been used for 7 years across a huge variety of industries and customizing it in just the way that you need to support the particular way that you're trying to launch this product. And if you're trying to find that balance of custom versus off the shelf, come talk to us, and we'd love to help.
Excellent. All right. And with that, we are going to move on to our next panel. But thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate it. Cheers.